This will be for the con assignment, simplify roots of negative numbers. Okay. In order to take the square root of a negative number, we need to use imaginary numbers. And the imaginary number I equals the square root of -1. Okay, so the letter I is not a variable, it's a number. It's an imaginary number, and it always equals the square root of -1. So here they're asking us to simplify the square root of -72. So we can break this up into the square root of -1 times the square root of 72. Okay, and we know that the square root of -1 is just I. So we have I radical 72. Okay, but we can break up the 72 as well. All right, so if you make the factors of 72, we have 9 times 8, and the 9 will be 3 times 3, and the 8 will be 4 times 2, and we can break up the 4 as well, but I'm just going to leave it. Okay, you circle the last number on each branch, and this part is just like the simplifying the square roots. Okay, so we still have I, and in place of radical 72, I am going to write 3 times 3 times 4 times 2. Okay, the square root of 3 times 3 is just 3. The square root of 4 is just 2. And we still have the I. And we still have the 2 underneath the square root. Okay, and of course, these are all multiplied. So 3 times 2 is just 6. We still have the I and the radical 2. So that's it. So it's the same as the con assignment, simplifying square roots, except there's one additional step for the square root of -1, and that becomes I. Alright, so 6I radical 2 in the box, just type 6I, hit the square root button, type 2. Okay, these are just all multiplied by each other. 6 times I times radical 2. Okay, square root of -18. Alright, pull out the square root of -1 right away. And the 18 becomes positive. Okay. And now this, of course, is just I. And I'm going to break up the 18. Let's see. 18 is the same as 9 times 2. And of course 9 is the same as 3 times 3. Circle the last numbers. Okay, so the square root of 18 we're going to rewrite. 3 times 3 times 2. The square root of 3 times 3 is just 3. Okay, we still have the I. And the only thing left under the square root is 2. So that's it. Enter that in the box. Type 3I. Hit the square root button. Type 2. All right, so these are the same. It's the same as simplifying square roots. Square root of negative 16. Okay, factor out the square root of negative 1. And we have positive 16. Square root of negative 1 is just I. And the square root of 16 is just 4. So we have I times 4, that's just 4I. Alright. So it's just 4 times I, but we can write 4I. Okay, here we have the square root of negative 66. Okay, factor out the square root of negative 1. 66 is positive. Let's see our factors for 66. We have 6 times 11. And the 6 is the same as 2 times 3. Okay, so we have 2 times 3 times 11 in place of 66, but we cannot take the square root of any of these numbers. Okay, so this just stays as is, and the square root of negative 1 is just going to be I. So it's I radical 66. Okay, if we had repeat numbers like 2 times 2 or 3 times 3, we can factor it out, but we can't take the square root of any of these numbers. So just type I radical 66.